And a happy Friday afternoon to you. It is Styles hanging out here for a special Friday edition of Happy Hour Live. Lou Brutus is our guest. We've had a busy week this week. We've had Royal Blood or Royal Bliss, excuse me, Neil with us yesterday. And then coming up next, we've got Through Fire going to be joining us on Tuesday. Blaine Weaver from the film Getaway. That's going to be on Wednesday of next week. Full details at Below No, Rock 96.7.com. Again, Lou Brutus joining me here today for Happy Hour Live, talking about his brand new book, Sonic Warrior, and all things rock and roll. Good afternoon, Lou. How are you?
Happy hour. Great to be here. It's actually water. I'd like to tell you it was some great Russian potato vodka or something, but my life is not nearly that exciting anymore. So
I can agree with that as well. I mean, all right, this is vodka water. I'll say that out loud for this one. It's Friday afternoon. It's 4:00 in Illinois, 5:00 where you are on the East Coast. How you hanging in there, brother?
Under the circumstances, so far so good. I've said it a thousand times, I think, the last couple of months. But if the worst thing I have to face during all of this pandemic stuff is that my book tour got pushed back, then I'm a pretty lucky guy. So I've been staying super busy with all the radio stuff and all the book stuff, and taking care of Darla the Wonder Dog in between all of that. So just chugging along. Hoping to take part of this weekend. This is the big exciting thing. There's two big exciting things for me this week on lockdown. One is that I've been meaning to send out tons of mail because as you can see behind me, there's a wall of my book, Sonic Warrior. Unless anybody think, because I think people think like I like having a wall of me up, and I'm narcissistic, but not that much. I just built a backdrop because it was good for, doing book interviews. But, I get 35 free copies as part of my deal with the publisher. And I haven't had a chance to send any of them out because I haven't been able to get to the post office. So, all the aunts and uncles that have been waiting for signed books are still waiting. Not that I'm in a rush to get them the books, because then they're going to know that their nephew is a degenerate once they read it. It'll be good and bad when it finally gets out. But the two big exciting things this week: one, I got a postal measuring scale, so I'm going to be able to mail everything out certainly by Monday, just from my mailbox, and do the self postage thing. And the other exciting thing this week has been, I like to take pictures, and I haven't been able to get out for rock and roll stuff for, 2.5 months, or, I shoot a lot of Major League Baseball down on the field. I haven't been able to do that. So lately on all of the walks that I take Darla the Wonder Dog on, my Yorkie poo, I've been bringing the camera and getting pictures of all her animal friends. And the fortified compound that Darla and I live in is surrounded by a lot of farms and a lot of horse farms, and we're down by the water, so it's a kind of a large peninsula. Everything dead ends, so Darla and I see lots of friends. So there's dogs and there's cats and there's horses. Wes, I'd mentioned to you before we went live, one thing I haven't gotten pictures of yet are the fox that live near us. There's many foxes, including a mom, a dad, and they have, I think, 3 or 4 kits. And I see them all the time, but never when I've got my good camera setups. So I'm gonna actually this evening take. There we have one of our newest friends. That is
that is
the gregarious barn cat. And one of the places that we walk to is at the very end of this road, and there's a red barn there. There had been a cat in there for years, and then it was catless for quite a while. We think that cat, who wasn't overly friendly, but he probably got eaten by fox, or sometimes coyotes pass through this area. But anyway, they finally got a replacement cat. His name is Moses. And he is extremely photogenic. He is very, very nice. For folks who are unfamiliar with me, they should know I like animals a lot more than most people. It's funny because I'll walk Darla and I know all the names of the dogs and the cats, but their owners, not so much. I'm like, hey, neighbor, it's good to see you, and it's good to see Toby, who's a good, and I'll play with the dogs and the cats and everything. So, oh yeah, there's Toby.
Okay, that
Excuse
is
me, no,
Toby.
that's not Toby. That's Leo,
Leo.
who's another fairly new neighbor. He moved in the last maybe 6 or 7 months, and he's a very wicked dog. He will sometimes get loose. I have at times personally organized search parties for
Oh
him.
wow.
There's Darla. Now that was Darla on her afternoon walk, and some dogs from another neighborhood had come through, so she was defending her turf. She's like a troublemaker because she started barking at those dogs, and literally within a minute, like every dog for 2 miles
Is just all going
was
crazy.
flipping out because Darla had led the charge. So, and she's only about 10 pounds. She's a
Oh,
little
she's a
old
tiny
Yorkie
little
poo,
thing.
but she
Yeah.
is the neighborhood dog. Yeah. And, there's just one of many horses. There are dozens of horses in the area. So, I lead a strange existence, not just through the pandemic, but I'm either in the middle of a crowd someplace in the photo pit, or up on stage, or backstage doing an interview. I'm either like at one peak, or I'm out in the middle of a sod farm a mile from another human being with my dog trying to chase down the fox so I can get some pictures, or I'm climbing on a cliff over the ocean trying to get pictures of a lighthouse. So it's one extreme or the other. There's a whole lot of in between for me. And then in the middle of all this stuff, talking about the book, which I'll show a closer cover of, because Lord knows I got plenty here.
Yep.
There it is. Oh, thanks very much. Sonic Warrior, my life is a rock and roll reprobate, tales of sex, drugs, and vomiting at inopportune moments. It was right in the beginning of the lockdowns that I was signing. The initial shipment was 28 books 28 cases of books
Oh wow.
from my publisher. So I autographed. That would have been, they sent 750 books. I kept 35 of those, what you see behind me, and 715 were sent back to the publisher, and those were immediately sold. They sold like in a day.
Wow.
So they sent me a second shipment. Those were sold out before I even signed them. And I finally had to get them out a third shipment of books. And that's just the signed books that are sold through my publisher, Rare Bird Lit. And that doesn't count the books that are being sold through local bookstores or bookshop.org, which is a great website, barnesandnoble.com, and of course Amazon, which is selling a ton of books too. They've put in for a few separate orders as the book is sold out via Amazon a few times. So, and I think that's what drives the price change. I've had a number of people ask me why the book price changes sometimes day to day. And I think it has to do with availability and the number of books they have in the warehouse. And it's like a commodities or something. I honestly don't know. That's my pea-brained intellect understanding of the situation. But yeah, the reaction has been great to the book. The reviews have been great. We've gotten a ton of press for it, including that Revolver published a chapter, really the craziest chapter, I think, in the book, or one of them, the one with chasing a fairly buck naked Taylor around the stage in Madison, Wisconsin. But they did the excerpt of that. And I'm just glad the thing was finally out. But back to the original point, I was signing in the middle of the initial shutdowns of the pandemic, and I'm like, I don't even know, is someone ever going to come by and pick up these books? Is FedEx going to shut down? Like, what the F is going to go on with all this? So I'm glad to keep trudging along through it all.
Do you, at this point right now, have an inkling of how many books you've sold?
Honestly, I do not know. I'm waiting on the numbers from my publisher.
Okay.
Things are weird for them because their section of LA where they're based has been shut down a lot. So things are moving agonizingly slower than they normally would. I just know that they're really, really good in terms of a book like mine. And I've been able to compare it not in numbers, but to other books like It was essentially the number one new book on the two heavy metal book charts on Amazon. It was the number 2 or 3 new rock book. That's leveled off a little bit. I think it's the number 5 new book in the metal chart, still in the top 20 in the rock chart. But then it goes up and down every day. If I'll pop on and do something on Facebook Live and talk about it a lot on the air one night, and then it shoots up 20 places and then shoots back down again. So it's kind of volatile. But I look forward to seeing what the numbers are, and hopefully the reaction continues to be really, really good. I love, and I'm going to mention this if you don't mind, when people take pictures with the book, because again, I haven't been able to get out and see people with it because all the book tour stuff, including the one there with you, which was going to be on the actual publication date. None of this has happened. So I haven't been able to see people with the book. So them taking pictures is the next best thing. And certainly it helps raise awareness and spread word about the book. But really, it's more selfish, and it's just makes me feel happy. And there have been so many people who have not only sent pictures with the book itself, but have sent pictures with the Kindle edition, or showing the stereo in their dashboard, and they're listening to the audio book. Other people, and apparently a lot of people do this, not just with my book, but with all books. Apparently it's a thing I didn't know about. People buy a book, but then they get the audio book and they listen, and they read while they're listening, and sort of time it out. And it's sort of doubly weird, I think, for some people with my book, because I narrate the audio book. And so they I'm like tag teaming on them or something.
Well,
I don't know what you call that. It sounds like something sexual almost. I don't know.
Well, there's no better way to have the story be told. It is in your words, but to have it done in your voice as well, it only makes it that much better.
Well, yeah, and for folks who don't know, Wes, you are one of the people that I've bounced these stories off of for years, and everybody in this business, they have, I call them rock and roll war stories. And when we get together after, we're at the bar after a big festival, or we'd be at something like the Happens convention out in Vegas. We all get together and we trade stories, and it was out of this. Oh, there I am speaking. That to date is the only public in-person reading I've done for my book. And I was glad to do it. That was just as things were getting really bad in the Pacific Northwest. And as I was wandering around Vegas, I'm sort of a germaphobe already, just because I've seen too many people who sneeze in their hand and then want to shake mine. And I'm like, what the hell is wrong with you? So for years, I have stayed away from opening door handles unless I pull my hand into my sleeve or something, which sounds really paranoid, but it's helped me avoid getting the flu and bronchitis a lot the last several years. So yeah. Oh yeah, those are the pictures. Yeah, there's the signing and stuff. But anyway, Wes, you were one of the people, along with my other rock and roll brethren, who helped me gauge what stories I should put in this, because I've already got enough stories for a second book. I think I can do one more really good book, like one that equals the quality of the one that's out now. Maybe
how many more could you do?
Say again, I'm sorry.
I was saying, I was actually going to ask, how many more books do you think you can do of these stories?
Yeah, I think I could do one more, like, really good one, like one that hopefully attains the quality of this one. I think another 2 would be stretching it. I'd rather have it be all killer, no filler, like the first one. And some of the chapters I didn't get to include the time I turned down a private audience with Pope John Paul II in order to spend time with Ozzy Osbourne. And that's an honest to God. Did I ever tell you this story?
No, I don't know this one. We've talked many stories over the years, but yeah, no, never that one.
Yeah. And it was one I meant to write and I just didn't get around to, and the deadline hit. I'm like, all right, I'm done, but my cousin Tommy is he's a great guy and one of the most likable people you could ever meet. Just one of the most charismatic people you could ever know. And he's a doctor, and he's got a number, like a lot of offices spread out across our home state of New Jersey. Tommy is loaded, and he came from a pretty tough background. Both his parents passed away when he was very young. So it's a really inspirational story. Anyway, I'm related to Tommy through my mom's side of the family. On his mother's, the opposite side of his family, there are a lot of people in the Catholic Church, and one of his, I think it was his great aunt, worked as the secretary, one of the first secretaries for Pope John Paul II. So one day, my cousin gets a call from like some cardinal or something at the Vatican, and there had been a bad storm, a nor'easter that hit New Jersey, and his great aunt by that time had left and was running a hospital, and the hospital got flooded out. So this cardinal calls and says, "Oh, we're looking for donations for the hospital to help fix it back up again." And he said, "Well, give me an example of like what you need." And they said, "Well, this wing was flooded and they need all flooring." And he said, "I'll just cut you a check for all of the floor," which it must have been a sizable amount. They said, "Well, what can we do for you?" And he jokingly said, "Well, I want to hang out with Pope John Paul II." So a couple of weeks later, the Vatican calls and says, "We understand you have a private audience with the Pope." So my cousin goes, and he takes his sister with him. I'm sorry, this is such a long story. I hope it's
no. This is interesting.
So my cousin ends up in the Vatican, and he meets the Pope, and he becomes friends with the Vatican banker. So my cousin now starts going back and forth a couple of times a year to hang out at the Vatican, and he's staying in the private apartments of the Vatican banker. So finally, one day, my cousin calls me up, and he said, "Lou, I got a surprise for you. You're not going to believe it. Next week, I'm flying you to Rome, and you and I are going to have lunch alone with Pope John Paul II." And I was like, "Tommy, I can't do that. I gotta fly to Dallas, Texas to be with Ozzy Osbourne." And he's like, "You can't turn down the Pope for Ozzy Osbourne. You'll go to hell." And I'm like, I gotta go. Sharon Osbourne will kill me if I'll miss they won't give me an interview anywhere. I gotta go. I can't miss it. So I had to turn down my invite to the Vatican with the Pope. And then a quick addendum to the story. Several years later, and my cousin just put a picture on Facebook of the two of us from this day. He was doing some fundraising stuff for some of the guys in the Washington National, some of the, he would organize some of the charity stuff. And I went one day to shoot. I do a lot of baseball photography. Yep. So it's a Saturday, and I walk on the field late morning. It's an early afternoon game, and I see my cousin talking to a priest. And this is the priest who's going to give, the benediction or the prayer in the clubhouse prior to the game for the guys who want to take part. And I see my cousin across the field. I'm walking out with all my camera gear, and "Hey, Tommy!" And I run across, and the priest looks at me, and he points, and he looks at my cousin and goes, "Wait a minute, this guy really exists?" And my cousin just nods his head, and the priest looks at me and goes, "You're the guy? You turned down a private lunch with His Holiness Pope John Paul II to spend time with Ozzy Osbourne? That really happened?" And I went, "Yes, Father, it did." And the priest looks at me and he backs away, and he's blessed me with this as he backs away. If he had had holy water, I think he would have doused me with it. Anyway, there's a lot more to the story, and I'm so sorry it took so long. I'm wired on.
No, that's great.
But that was just some more weird stuff out of my life. Now, the trip that I ended up making, which was down to Texas, Vinny and Dimebag were backstage at that show, and that's where Vinny taught me how not to drink to excess when people are giving you free drinks. But that'll probably be a separate chapter. So that's just one of many things that just didn't make it into the book. I didn't get around to, and there's so many things that since I finished the manuscript and turned it in, I remembered, or other people reminded me about, like, dude, Eddie Van Halen named a band after you and
Right.
performed under your name. And I'm like, oh yeah, I forgot about that. Like, so much stuff has happened, I forget. So anyway, hopefully, this book does well enough that I get to do a second one. As you know, the original book I wanted to do, the first book, was a book of all my memorabilia, because I've been to north of 3,000 concerts, and I've pretty much kept every ticket stub and pass and everything else. Hopefully that'll be a book. I thought that would be the first one, and my lit agent, Bob DeForio, said, well, you're not going to get that as a first book. He said, it's too expensive to put together, because it'll be a coffee table book, larger format, nothing but pictures, colored ink, different paper, very expensive. He said the publishing industry is worse off than the record industry now. So he said, write your crazy book of stories. That, boom, you'll do great with that. And then once you show you can sell one book, the publishers come back to you and go, hey, buddy, what else you got? So hopefully everything will work out, and I'll get those things done. There's some other book ideas I have, but I think next in line would be other stories, then a book of the memorabilia, and then we'll see where it goes from there.
Now, would you still call it Sonic Warrior Part 2, or do you think
oh God, I don't even know. More Sonic Warrioring, more sex and drugs, less vomiting. I don't know. When the time comes, I'll figure it out. I always jot down ideas here and there. Sometimes I can find them, sometimes I can't. But at least with the names of the chapter titles for what would be in the second book, I've kept a running list of those things. So
okay.
Hopefully that'll come in handy if I need to write another one.
Well, that's good, yeah, because like you said, the couple that you've forgotten, we talked actually the one time about that Eddie Van Halen thing. It's over on the Styles Cast. Go to rock967.com for that. With this book being out and everything that you've seen, you were so worried when we first talked leading up to the release of the book about the reactions and just its selling. I mean, you got to be happy with what you've seen so far. You've talked a little bit about just what you've seen, but how do you feel about all of it now?
A great sense of relief, I guess, is it. Like, okay, so they don't think it sucks totally. So, so that's a good thing. And the reaction from, not just people who listen to the show, who are, primary targets, targets for this thing. But from, my musician friends and rock star friends who have checked it out, they've, everybody's really dug it, Again, back to something you had brought up before, the book grew out of, me just out loud talking these stories out loud, which is why it really does read like me just telling you the story, and why it lent itself so well to, I think, being an audio book. So, I think the reason it resonates, or I think maybe the reason it resonates so well with so many folks is, it's just told very honestly and straightforward in a way that I would tell you face to face if we were in person.
Yeah, and there's no ghostwriter involved. It's 100% you. It's which makes it even better.
I can't afford a ghostwriter. Like, and you think about that sort of thing. I thought, well, gee, I wonder if somebody else could write this better. And then I thought, well, nobody's going to be able to write it better than me. And all I really did was think about how I said it out loud, or sometimes I would just speak out loud and like, how did I say that? Okay. And then I typed that out, and then you refined it after that. And you put it through rewrites to make it more bookish, I guess.
Right.
And then of course you add in, things that I might not put in the story, like background on a venue or some other background on the rock star or stars involved, that if it was you and I speaking, you would already know that stuff, but you want to put it in for a reader because you can't assume that they know all this stuff. So and then you kind of whip it through some more rewrites, and then you send it off, and then the editor hits it and suggests changes, or they'll fix stuff. There's mistakes in the book, so when we get to a second print and or paperback, those things will be fixed.
And where are those mistakes at?
Well, the one that bugs me the most.
Okay.
Like there's one sentence that really gets butchered, but I won't say where it is. And there's some other minor.
Make me go find it now.
Well, man, I know people who have found these things. The one thing that really gets me though is at the end of the book, there's an appendix called the list, and there's actually a version of this on my website, loubrutus.com, and it's a list, a fairly complete list of all the bands that I've seen, and it's. Well, look up Herb Alpert because it's spelled Albert with a B. And of course, I find this when I show up to New York with a copy of the manuscript and I go to a place called Duart Media.
Okay.
And they're in Midtown Manhattan, just off Central Park South. And they do book readings there and they do film audio. They've got, like an actual Oscar that they won in the lobby. Like it's a heavyweight place in the film and the audio world. And that's where I did the audiobook. And going through the audiobook, I'm like, well, that's wrong. How the hell that getting there? Like, and I must have read these chapters like literally 100 times each, but stuff still gets through. So, even The Hobbit was first published with mistakes. So, I guess I'm in okay company in that respect. But, we'll get everything fixed that we find for later editions of the book. So, and I did fix them in the audio book. Technically, I wasn't supposed to, but because they said, well, the copyright, you can't change it because we're only, and I'm like, dude, I own the copyright. I'm giving me permission to go and change it and fix it for this. So,
How did you ever go back and listen to your version of the audiobook after reading it and it was completed
No,
and put it all together?
I listening to myself. It's like anything else, and for all the times that I read it, writing it and going through the editing process, I haven't gone back to read the finished product yet. Cause I hate having to go back through my own stuff. Because all I see are things that should or could be better, besides just blatant mistakes. It's like, I'll hear like a best of version of Harddrive XL, driving through a town someplace. And I'm like, that break could have been so much better. All I hear are mistakes. And not that I would ever compare myself to any other artists, certainly people who have done far greater things than me. But I once did an interview with Chuck Jones. Chuck Jones was one of the great directors and creators of Looney Tunes, the Bugs Bunny cartoons for Warner Brothers, and all of those great characters, which I think are some of the greatest pieces of art of the 20th century. And he was also a great author. I would highly recommend his book, Chuck Amok. Because it gets to the heart of how those cartoons and how his other projects through the years were created. And one of the first things I asked him was, Mr. Jones, and then he corrected me. He said, my name's Chuck. Don't call me Mr. Jones. You just want to go, oh, Mr. Jones from, Giovanni Jones from the Bugs Bunny What's Opera doc. Anyway, sorry. I said, when you go to these film festivals now and you receive awards and these accolades for these cartoons that you did all these years ago, when you watch the cartoons, are you able to enjoy it, or do you only see things that you want to redo? And he went, oh my God, it's the worst. He said, I can't enjoy anything I've ever done. We should have held this for another frame, or the line should have, had a double syllable word instead of a single syllable here. And he said it drove him crazy to check out his own work because all he saw were mistakes. All he heard were things that could have been better. So not that I would compare my little dog and pony show of a book to the great work of the Warner Brothers cartoonists, but everybody goes through that. I remember I was doing an interview with Paul McCartney once, and I asked him, "Are you okay when you go back and hear things?" And he goes, "Oh yeah, when it was done, it was done. It was great. It was what it should be, and never think twice about it." But he's Paul McCartney, so
yeah, right.
Perfect. The rest of us poor schmucks, we're not in the same wagon as he is.
Oh yeah, number of times same thing. Listen to breaks that may have been taped in advance, promos I've recorded, things like that. You're driving around town, you're like, oh my
Oh,
God, did I write that wrong?
I suck. Oh, oh, this is the worst.
Yeah, why do I still have a job? Why?
Oh, God almighty. Yeah, it's just one of the things, but you always want to be driven to make anything better, which is why,
Absolutely.
which is why they put deadlines on books and albums. Now I've made some albums too of some of the crazy music things I've worked on, but unless there's a due date, you just keep effing around with it. You just keep finagling and you got to have a deadline. If bands didn't have deadlines, no albums would ever be released. It wouldn't happen, except Paul McCartney.
Tool. Well, Tool. Look at Tool. I mean, look how long it took
Yeah.
for this last album to come out.
Hey, 2 words: Chinese freaking democracy. That's what happens when let's add some more horn parts, and I'm going to Barbados for a year or whatever the hell he was doing during that.
Oh man.
By the way, that's a much better album than people give it credit for. But nothing could live up to the decades of hype.
No, and if it was just Axl Rose, like that's it, don't put the Guns N' Roses name on it, I think it would have been perceived differently. But it had that Guns N' Roses name and everything with it. It's not a shabby album. And hearing the band currently perform some of the songs off it when they were on tour,
great. Yeah. There's more of a fire to them live too. But that's how it is for most bands. That's not a knock on Axl or Guns N' Roses or anybody else. So.
No, absolutely not. You talk about deadlines and things like that. A lot of bands are at home right now, unfortunately, because of COVID-19. Touring's done for at least the summer at this point. How do you see next year being the boom of record releases?
Yeah, I would think so. And I think two really unpleasant things are going to drive it. One is the downtime many artists have had. And like this is not news at this point. So many artists have said, "Oh my God, I'm writing for 10 weeks straight." But then on top of it, I think the current unrest across the country because of so many tragic events. I think that is also going to drive writing and creativity.
Yeah.
I am not the first person in the world to notice that it is often out of the most horrible of situations that great art is created. Certainly, some of the best music of our lifetimes has come out of turmoil and unfairness. And I would expect that to continue, brought on by both everything that has grown out of the situation with the virus, and then all of the other things that have been grabbing the headlines this week out of Minnesota and spreading across the country. So, art helps people make sense of these things and get their feelings across in ways that they can't sometimes just straight out say. And it's one of the reasons why art, in particular for me, music, is so important to my life.
How many records do you own?
Vinyl or CDs or everything?
Everything combined.
I gave away a couple thousand pieces of vinyl. Excuse me. That I had lugged back and forth around the country in all my moves because I got tired of moving it. And I love the fact that so many people are into vinyl. I didn't love it that way. I kept all the promos and all the autograph stuff and all the super rare stuff, but most of it I let go. I've got, I don't remember. I'm going to guess 5,000 to 8,000 CDs.
Wow.
Something like that. Maybe it's less. But a lot of that is autographed too. But everything is in storage. Everything, I have big storage units that I rent, and that's where the lion's share of the memorabilia and the music is. The house that I used to live in, I had a 1-car garage that had been converted into a music room. And when I lost that, I lost the space to moved into a larger house, which is where I am now, but it doesn't have a music room like I had there. And I've been meaning to finish the basement eventually, but I've been saying that for 10 years. When that gets done, then I think I'll grab everything and move it into there. But until then, it just sits in crates and boxes. Now and then I have to go fish something out. And, from time to time, in particular on Instagram, I'll post pictures of, hey, here's 10 rare Slipknot posters that I just pulled out of a tube, or here's some CDs autographed by Peter Gabriel and his, or whatever the hell it is, or some old backstage passes or ticket stubs or whatever. But then the stuff goes right back into the crates, and it goes away. So one day I hope it'll be out where it can be appreciated. And again, as we touched on before, I hope a book can get made out of it all.
Yes.
The tentative title of that book is One Man, 3,000 Concerts, the greatest collection of rock and roll shite ever assembled. So, yeah.
I'm looking forward to that. I know we talked about it before. That was going to be the original idea. We now
Yeah.
ship the Sonic Warrior. So really looking forward to everything you got coming down the pike, and hopefully with all of those things. This year, as we mentioned, kind of a wash in a lot of ways. What do you see as the future for concerts when we finally come back? Because there's going to be the social distancing. There's going to be new rules in place. What is your vision at this point right now for what we know? What that's going to look like? Small venue, big venue, major festivals? What are you thinking?
I honestly don't know, and I'm certainly no expert. So the camera's placed too high. I would turn around and move my butt cheeks in and out, for talking out of my butt. But really, I think it's going on a few different factors. One of which is there a spike in sickness as things loosen up, and if there's not, maybe things will get a little easier, a little bit quicker. Are we going to get a vaccine? Because we don't always get vaccines. There are things that people have gotten sick from for a long time that they've been working on vaccines for decades and they don't have.
Right.
I'm cautiously optimistic, and I'm not saying, again, I'm just a rock and roll guy. A lot of different news sources, but I'm hoping that since, for really the first time in history, you've got all the super smart medical research people on the planet all working on the same problem at the same time, that maybe that will hasten a vaccine that hopefully they can distribute quick enough. So if those things fall into place in a fortunate way, then maybe next year things start to look more like normal. I think you're going to have varying degrees of, I don't know what words to use, discomfort or displeasure in going out in any kind, let alone concerts, depending on how things are breaking. And I think it's going to be regional as well. I think it's going to depend on, how bad things are. Montana, where people are super spread out, virus has not been the sort of problem it's been in places that are concentrated with people like New York City. So I just hope we get it turned around quicker rather than later. But as for what it's going to look like, I don't know. Can you get in a pit and depend on people to stay 6 feet away from one another? Or are you going to make people sit with two empty chairs in between them at concerts and then move them in and out a row at a time? And what happens if someone needs to go to the bathroom? The whole row is going to have to, it sounds fairly difficult for those things to pull off. So that's why my greater hope is that they figure out a treatment to keep you from getting really sick, which will, probably likely happen before a vaccine. And then, hopefully we get a vaccine fairly quickly. So we'll see. Again, I'm a glass half full person, so I hope it can get turned around sooner.
As do I. I really just want to, honestly, I kind of just want to be at a show and I want to be with people at this point, but I understand the circumstances at the same time.
Yeah,
That
and,
missing,
I know some people are really, angry about these things. And they're, earlier this week, I was super bummed out. One of the main things on my calendar all year is Rockfest in Cadott, Wisconsin.
Yep.
And they had to postpone it till next year. And, I think a lot of people understood, and a lot of people were very upset. And I understand them being upset. But, I would rather people miss some shows for a summer or a couple of, several months, then, and make sure everything is good next year, then people get together too soon, and it costs a lot of lives. I mean, listen, there's no easy way out of this. There's just not. At this point, there are a few different paths to go down, and each one of them have a certain amount of hurt and discomfort and pain in the acidness about them. So there's no magic way out of this thing. So I hope that doesn't sound like a cop out, but it's as honest an answer as I can give to anybody.
No, that's a truly good, honest answer. None of us have the actual answer itself, but the vision of what it's going to look like, you're totally right, I think, in that regard. And it'll be interesting to see. How's Darla been treating you during all of this?
Well, she gets angry that I'm home all the time. I think she really gets pissed off because she doesn't get Darla time. And sometimes she just wants the family out of the house so she can have her quiet time. And often, and still through all of this, I've been trying to get out and walk every day and exercise. I shower and shave every day, just so I don't fall into the trap of, I don't want to come out of this 50 pounds heavier. And, so that has led Darla to get really pissed off sometimes. But I do get to go on her, well, I'm missing one now, but her late afternoon, early evening walks, which are always fun for me. And as I said before, I'm bringing out the cameras and shooting all her animal friends and stuff. So that's been a lot of fun. But yeah, I think sometimes she just wants everybody to get it out of her face, and so she can have the house to herself. Because why would I get a say over what I do when my 10-pound Yorkie poo could just tell me what to do, say, and think?
I think that one of the most famous lines you ever told me about Darla, it was a bunch of us together, something along the lines of, my wife gets a vote, my kid gets a vote, and Darla gets two. I'm completely outmanned in this house.
Oh, yeah. If we had a parakeet, I would be the fifth man down on the totem in my own house. I don't get much of a say in anything. But that's the way it is. As we say around here, it's Darla's world. We just live in it.
Is she technically your wife's dog or your dog? And how does that work?
Very much mama's girl. She,
okay.
Yeah, you better do what Ma says. That's my Darla voice, and all day long. And I imagine it would be cute for a few minutes, but I do it all of the time. Oh yeah, there you go, Lou Brutus, Darla the Wonder Dog's pops. Yes, she calls him, hey Pop, come here. She said, I think she sounds a little like Bugs Bunny.
She's got a little Bugs Bunny, a little gangster in her, a little bit like old school.
Yeah, a little bit of that. Pop, you're in hot water with Ma. Oh boy. But I narrate her wherever we go, and I don't think it's the fact that I talk to my dog while I'm walking her that worries the neighbors. It's that I answer back for her. So I talk in two voices, walking her down. Darla, get over here. No way, Pops. Too many good smells. That's the part I think gets them. So they just kind of, here comes crazy Lou and little Darla. But also, I don't know many of my neighbors' names, but I know all of the dogs and cats' names. My neighbors will go, hey, you're that fella I see with Darla now and then, right? Yeah. I'm the guy with Darla who doesn't have a name.
That when you're home, that's what you are. But to the rest of the world, you are Lou Brutus, the Sonic Warrior, the legend, the myth.
When I'm out in the world, author, radio, rock and roll, and when I'm back home, it's just like, yeah, shut up and scratch my ass. She does like having her butt scratched, by the way. She sticks her butt right. I have to scratch all the way around her little puppy butthole. And angles against me to get more rubbing strength. This is what I do all day. This is what I've been doing for the last 12 weeks. It's been crazy.
Oh man, does she just follow you around all day, or is she just whenever you're in the room, she's there, but she's not coming after you?
It depends on what she wants.
Okay,
it's all a matter of she just goes from one person in the house to the next. When she wants something, usually it's food, but she wants scratches or rubs, or she wants to play games. And then when she's done with you, you better not bother her, because she does not want to hear about it. She'll go off to her bed, or she has quiet spots around the house and she wants to be left alone, and you had better leave her alone. We have another saying in my house: Darla won't like it. And if you're doing something she won't like, man, you will know about it, you know.
She'll be running in the room barking up a storm.
Oh yeah, she rats you out. She'll rat you out to the other family members.
Oh,
or
wow.
she'll just yell at you in your face, or we call it rowing, where she'll that's when you know you are really in hot water with Darla.
Much like some of the videos you have shared where she's talking back to you. Don't you talk to me that way.
Oh, I mean, some of these go on for like 5 or 6 minutes where she just will not let it go. I mean, you know.
You created a monster is what you did.
Don't blame me. She was she's like Lady Gaga, born that way.
I'm honestly surprised with all the photos you post of her that she does not have her own like Instagram account on its own.
Well, I don't want to lose all the views from my own. That's the stock honest answer. It's like I'm not giving up all those eyes. Although if I could make sure she could be verified from the get-go, I think maybe then I would do that. That would be good. You know, the official verified Darla the Wonder Dog Instagram account. I think that would be good. And we've got to get her some merch too, I think, somewhere along the line. You know, we've done the stickers and challenge coins and a number of other Darla related things, but maybe we'll do some fresh merch for her.
T-shirts. I think T-shirts would be great.
Yeah, and there's tons of great Darla artwork already. So yeah, out of that, we'll get around to it. She does have I don't really want to say anything about this yet. It's too early. She does have a major announcement of some kind coming up, but it probably won't be for several more weeks. But very exciting news for our nation.
Oh boy. I love how the Darla probably doesn't even have a clue this is coming yet, but boy, you are planning it.
Well, you know, she's in on all the I think she senses what goes on in some way, you know.
All right. Well, looking forward to it. Lou, I appreciate the time so much this afternoon and this evening. Sonic Warrior is out now.
Buy my
Buy it. And again, they can get it on Amazon, Rare Bird Lit. Anywhere else that you want to tell them to go get it at?
They can Barnes & Noble online. You can also order it from your local bookstore. I would really prefer people to buy the book from their local bookstore. That is extremely problematic at this time, I understand. So online, Rare Bird Lit, Barnes & Noble, Amazon. The ebook is available in all ebook formats, including Kindle. And the audiobook is in all formats too, with I guess the most common that I've been able to tell from the reactions has been Audible. But you can also Google Play and everything else. So just get the damn book. And again, it's you know, if you're missing concerts right now, I think it's a really good book to make you feel better, you know, because most everything in the book is around live shows, and all the chapters are short. I know most people have blasted through the book in a few days. I mean, if you sit down over a nice summer weekend, you can blast through it, and I think get a lot of laughs. But also, I think and I hope it gives you a really good idea of what the rock and roll business is truly like behind the scenes. In many bland and ridiculous ways.
Yeah, everyone thinks we're partying backstage and getting drunk and doing drugs.
A bunch of tour managers yelling at you, you know.
Oh yeah, I can name a few that I'm just like, if I know that tour manager's working that.
Say that again.
Oh, I was saying I know several. If I know a certain tour manager is working a tour, I go, okay, I'm straight up button, everything good. Don't mess with this guy or girl.
Yeah, well, I mean, I always show up on. And one of the things in the book, you know, you always show up on time and you're always respectful of everybody. But yeah, so some tour managers more than others. Some of them yell a bit more than others. So I get in, hello, and then get out. You know, a little rock and roll commando raid.
Very good. Go pick up the book, Lou. Thank you again, and don't forget, guys, we got Through Fire coming up on Tuesday, 4:00 Central, here on Happy Hour Live.
And I will remind everybody, Lou Brutus Rocks on Facebook. Also, be sure to follow me on Twitter and Instagram at Lou Brutus. And follow the show, harddriveradio.com or at Harddrive Radio on all the social nets. Get show and contest information. And finally, my own website, loubrutus.com. thousands of pieces of my photography, all sorts of career stuff. And if you're looking for anything related to the book, it's right there on the front page. You can link clear through to it. So, Wes, thanks very much. You've been a good friend for many, many years, and I appreciate all of the support on the book. And I promise I'm going to get to your area when the coast is finally clear, and we'll do an in-person book signing and reading. And I don't think Darla will make that one, but I'll give it the old college try.
Well, you can at least give us the Darla voice at the reading.
Damn, my pop said I couldn't make it.
And what a perfect note to leave on. All right, we'll see you guys next time on Happy Hour Live.